Carolina Pickleball Club is a premier organization dedicated to providing a welcoming and competitive environment for pickleball players in Kannapolis. They are passionate about promoting the sport among seasoned players and beginners alike, offering skill-based competitions that challenge and inspire. Go visit our friends at the Carolina Pickleball Club, 724 Chipola Street in Kannapolis, and tell them the Rough Talk cousins at the K-Town Connection sent you. Rough Talk Ryan, how you doing today? And before I even ask you that, I noticed we got an empty seat over there. So what's going on with Dr. Dave?
Man, I know. I hate it. I mean, we thought he was going to be here up until about 10 minutes before we started talking, and he had to go and break something to keep from being here. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He could have just told us that he didn't want to be here today. But I thought because of our guest today that he would for sure make it no matter what. But I mean, we could have just took this to his house, I guess.
We could have, and who knows, we can do remote broadcast, and, maybe we'll have to do that one day. I do believe, unfortunately, that this is going to be the end of our K-Town Connection pickleball team for the time being.
For the time being.
But we'll have to find someone to go over there and join the K-Town Connection pickleball team over at Carolina Pickleball Center. But anyway, pickleball club. Sorry about that. But anyway, welcome back to K-Town Connection. Another crazy episode. I think this is going to be a great episode that we're going to learn something really, really, really cool. I don't want to over or understate the cool part, but I think it's really cool, Ryan.
Yeah, somebody that we've been wanting to get on for a long time. And, there's so many directions this conversation could go today. Yeah. And from history to present day.
And you really mentioned for a long time, and before we bring you on here, we could pull back the initial set of scribble notes that we made about 4 years ago when we created K-Town Connection, and his name was on there. It's one of the original ones that we wanted to interview. So this is really cool. 3 years into it that we finally get him in here. But Ryan, as always, I'm going to give you the honors.
Well, I don't know any other way to do it and just say who it is. And today we have the Tim Jung. And Tim is with, he's a realtor in town, but more importantly, he represents his family's,
legacy.
I'm going to say legacy. Yeah, legacy.
Gosh. I mean, incredible legacy.
It's unreal how long their family history goes back.
Almost as long as the Dayvalts. Being
long time.
Very.
And some of the original folks to be brought here to Kannapolis to help form the town and provide services for people who lived and worked here. And we will let Tim tell the family story, of course, but welcome to K-Town Connection, and thank you for being a great loyal fan of ours since inception.
Mr. Tim Jung, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Ryan and Chris, for having me. It's an honor to be able to get up and tell this story. Much of the story we didn't even know, the family didn't know until about 5-6 years ago.
Oh.
But to go back, you were talking about the long legacy. We actually now this year we go back 111 years.
Wow,
that's incredible.
It's been a pretty long run, and I think my dad's phone number, 7191. They had that in the laundry. They had that at Dad's house. I think it was probably one of the longest running phone numbers. In Kannapolis until he died. Of course, that's been 10 years ago. But to tell the story, the narrative of the family was written by my Uncle Walker, and the thought was that my granddad came from China directly to Kannapolis in 1912, because there's a boat ticket that we have copies of, and the boat ticket's in the book over there. It's dated 1912, but there was a gentleman who was a Chinese history professor, if you will, wrote a couple books. One was called Southern Fried Rice, and it was about life in the Chinese laundries in the South. And so my Uncle Jim got a hold of that book and of course read the book and got in touch with him, being a professor himself, got in touch with his name was Dr. Jung. Okay, he was Dr. John Jung. He was at the time in Indianapolis, I believe. But through their conversation, Dr. Jung sent us a copy of the census record actually showing my granddad in the country in 1901. So looking at the census record and all of that, I just got curious if this is true, what was he doing between 1901 and 1912? And because I never heard any conversation, any of my dad or anybody talk about it. So I kind of set out on the journey to try to figure some of this out, realizing that probably most of the people were gone, dead, not with us anymore, and it'd be hard to find it out. So, but I went down, my Uncle Jim was telling me that he remembered the laundry in Concord, the original laundry, and I went down looking for that, and just out of curiosity, my wife and I went to, back up, was able to find the location of the laundry, but we'll come back around to that. But my wife and I took a little trip to New York City, and I went up and found, in a museum, I found a book about the Tong Wars. If anybody, I will maybe talk about that a little bit more too. I'm kind of rambling in my thoughts here to get to the beginning of this, but I didn't have time to stand in the museum and read the book, but I wrote down the guy's name, took a picture of the back of the cover and all, and I got in touch with this guy and that wrote the book, and he told me that if my grandfather came to the country during the period, if he came to the country or left the country during the period of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which was 1884 until after World War I believe it was, that the National Archives would probably have some records on him. And I said, wow. And he said, you've got a boat ticket. So I Googled National Archives and find out there's a branch in Seattle, Washington. Well, the boat ticket that we have was initiated in Seattle, Washington, or it was a ticket to Seattle, Washington. And there was a serial number on it. So I call up to the National Archives, and the lady answers the phone, and I tell her what I'm looking for, and she says, and you've got a boat ticket with a serial number on it? And I said, yes, I do. She said, send me that, and let me see what I can find for you. So about 3 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I get an email from her, and she says, I have your grandfather's, your grandmother's, and your aunt's immigration records, or records of their travel. And so I was thrilled to get that, because we had no idea that stuff even existed. And in fact, once I got a hold of that, I took that to our last surviving uncle, Uncle Jim, and was showing it to him, and tears rolled down his face, and he said, we never knew any of this stuff, you know. And I thought, well, how did all y'all live upstairs in the laundry in Kannapolis and never have any conversation about any of this? But they were boys, you know. There were 5 boys, and then Granddad. Of course, Granddad died in 1949. But what I learned from all of that and going through the records and putting all this back together and writing the story was that Granddad and his father came, according to the records, came to America when he was 3 years old. So that would have been 1880. And 1880, yeah. They came to San Francisco, and then I'm guessing after the gold rush was over and the railroads were built and the Chinese immigrants started migrating east, they went to New York. The Chinese, they went to San Francisco, well, they were in San Francisco, they were in Seattle, they went to Chicago, they went to St. Louis, they went to New York, they went to Connecticut. And but our group landed in New York City, in Chinatown. Now, if you look at that boat ticket closely, you'll notice the name is not Daniel Jung on the ticket. The ticket was made out to a guy by the name of Liang Moy. Now, in Chinese, they put the surname first, so his name would have actually, if we were calling it out, would have been Moy Liang, or we'd have probably gone by Moy. But all of his records and everything in there up until about after 1909 reference Liang Moy. So we were actually Liangs, the way it turns out. Now, the Liangs, the story about the Liangs is that as the people migrated out of San Francisco to New York, they became groups or like factions of the Chinese population. And these groups, there was only 4 blocks in New York City where they lived, and these groups started having territorial wars. And they called the groups the Tongs, or the Tongs are actually the meeting place where each group met, but they go by the name of the Tongs. And there were 2 major Tongs. There were the Liangs, which we are affiliated with, and there were the Hip Sings. And these people actually had street wars in New York City. It was over territory.
Wow.
They supported themselves, the Chinese at that time. They weren't skilled laborers or anything like that. They supported themselves in the sex trade, the gambling trade, and the drug trade. So, and they weren't always so nice people, okay? But so they started having these wars over territory in there, and we're talking about street wars, and we're talking about hatchets in the back and shootouts in the theaters and this kind of stuff. Well, turns out the Liangs, who we have some affiliation with, were really the bad guys. Okay.
Kind of like mobsters.
Like mobsters.
Yeah.
Well, they all were.
Yeah.
But the
Sounds like
Liangs
it.
were probably the worst of the mobsters. In fact, up until even as late as in the 1990s, the Liangs were involved in some drug trade up in New York City, in some drug gangs. But anyway, that's not the claim to fame I want, but that's just the way it was.
It sets the stage, and it kind of
So-
gives us a little bit of a baseline to kind of understand how it was that your family got here. And now, were they, I don't know if it's safe to say, were they the first Asian American Chinese family to settle in this area, or do you think there was others?
No, I've been told that they were the first.
That is incredible.
And through this, there'll be several first. I don't say we're the first of everything,
Sure.
but there were several first. First Asian group or Chinese people to come. Granddad left. He was in New York. The interesting thing was, we were talking about the Tongs, was that Granddad, it says in the records that he lived on Pell Street. Well, the Liang headquarters were on Mott Street. The Hip Sing, the arrival headquarters, was on Pell Street. So why he lived on Pell Street, I don't know.
Oh.
But Granddad had a business around on the Bowery. If you've ever been in New York, you walk around China, you go down close to the water and you're there on the Bowery. But he had a business there, and he says that they lived on Pell Street.
It was a laundry business?
No, it was more of a kind of a general store,
Okay.
general good Chinese
Yeah.
wares type
Yeah.
stuff. And then that's really the business that Granddad first was in through a group out of Norfolk, Virginia. He traveled Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, selling Chinese wares and food, rice and stuff
Right.
like that. So, and I guess that's how he learned about Concord. I'm not
Right.
sure, but about that. But he left New York in 1909, about the time of when the Tong Wars were really starting to heat up.
And this is your grandfather.
This is my grandfather.
And your grandfather is Daniel Jung.
Yeah, Liang Moy, who later becomes Daniel
So
Jung.
I want to ask you this, because I mentioned a second ago Asian Americans, Chinese Americans, but he was born in China, so he was Chinese. Who was the first member of your family that you're aware of that was born here? His son, your father?
that was born here would have been my dad.
New Moon.
New Moon.
That's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's quite a remarkable legacy, and also just really cool for your family
Yeah.
to be a first generation America from China, but also to have the impact and within the community and all the things that you guys would do.
Yeah. Let's back up just a second, though. See, Dan, he came in, he left New York 1909 and went to Norfolk, Virginia. There was a group of people down there named Jung. Okay, and I suspect that that's at some point he changed his name. And I'm thinking maybe he didn't want to carry the name Liang
Right,
anymore,
sure.
being associated with the sex trade and the gangs in New York. Because I mean,
Sure.
you never
People
know.
knew that.
Looking for a new start.
Yeah.
People knew that.
And it's not uncommon, you know. And I've done a lot of ancestry research through my own self for the day vaults. You know, a lot of names around that time frame, around the early or late 19th century, families did change their names. Like I found, you know, day vaults that were DeWalt's and but different spelling.
Some
and,
of
you
it's
know,
because they didn't know how to spell.
they didn't know how to spell, and sometimes, you know, a census worker would just write it down however they thought it was, and things did change.
Well, there's I'll tell you a little story about that too, because that happened in our family. But to back up just a little bit more, Granddad went to Norfolk. He left New York in 1909, went to Norfolk. In 1911, he went back to China for, I guess, maybe the first time, and to visit with his mother. They said his records said that his dad went home earlier than that, and he never saw his dad again. So his dad died before he went home. But he went home in 1911, and I don't know if it was an arranged marriage or what, but married my grandmother, and then he came back in 1912. So everybody always said that, see, grandmother did, and my aunt, who was, I guess, conceived while they were there, they didn't get to the United States till 1925. So, and I'm guessing there was another act, the Chinese Exclusion Act prohibited the Chinese laborers from coming to America. The way Granddad got here was that he was an established merchant. He had been here before the Chinese Exclusion Act and then established himself as a merchant, which you had to be, or a student, to be admitted to the United States. So, but there was another act called the Page Act that prevented Chinese women from coming to America. And that was enacted actually before the Chinese Exclusion Act because most of the women were coming as prostitutes.
Wow.
For the sex trade. So they stopped that. But Grandma, call her Grandma, her name was Li Shi. And we're talking about changing the name. When she got here, they changed her name to Li Q, just the letter Q. It was easier for her to write Q on a check than it was to write Li Shi. So she just signed off as Q.
Q.
And if you go to her crib down here at Carolina in the mausoleum there, her name is Li Q on the door.
How about that?
And I went to try to get that changed, and the funeral home, they wanted a lot of money to go do that. And I talked to Uncle Jim about it, and he says, well, she signed her name as Lee Q, so let's just leave it as Lee Q. But that goes back to what you were saying about people changing their names and for different reasons. But they didn't get here till 1925. By that time, Granddad had left New York, went to Norfolk, was in Norfolk till 1909, went home, came back, and then decided to leave Norfolk. And he left and went down to Madison, North Carolina, and opened a laundry there. There is an article in the book in there, it's just a little newspaper blib, that states that Daniel had decided to close his laundry. This is in 1914 because no one would do business with him as a Chinese home business. And the writer of the article is really chastising the people of Madison, North Carolina, because they wouldn't accept this man and do business with him. So he left. 1915, I'm supposing he opened in Concord. And I'm assuming he had to have rented that building from the Cannons. I think Ryan, you mentioned to me one time, I think Bill Cannon had told you that they met somewhere in New York. But he came down here, he rented that building. It was directly across the street from Mr. Cannon's office. So they're on Union Street, in the 9 Union Street building today. It's actually the first 2 windows of that building was, you've got the fire map right on your hand there. Flip it. There's the fire map. And if you can figure out how to read that, you'll see 7 Union Street was the address down there. But 1920, Mr. Cannon talks Granddad into coming to Kannapolis and opening a second laundry. So you see it there? Okay. So the next picture there that's in the book is the one you've got hanging up in your lobby there, Ryan. I have that there because it shows that they took the general store building that was called the Lowe's building off the corner of Main Street and what was then, I believe, Church Street, that became First Street, that is now Martin Luther King, that turns into Laureate Way, correct? They took that corner, that old general store building, and put it on wheels and rolled it down and pushed it in the alley there where the gym theater is. But now the gym theater wasn't there at the time. If you look close at that picture on the other side of First Baptist Church, you'll see houses sitting there, because all of that area and even West Avenue
was a residential area.
Was a residential area.
There was.
So, they pushed that building in there. If you turn the page, the next one, you'll see that building sitting there beside the lake, in front of the lake.
Sure enough. Yes,
and that's First Baptist Church there on
How about
right
that?
in front of it. So, and then you go on down, keep going on down the line, and we find that in I guess probably 26 or so, Dad was born in that building. New Moon was born in that building.
In the one that's at the
That's right.
the
there
Lowe's store
in the Lowe's building. And then Mr. Cannon went around on West Avenue and built the building you're looking at there, which today, for the sake of the people, is L's Teak. It's a little clothing outlet. It's the building when you come around the corner, come down the sidewalk, you look up, there's 3 windows across the front of the building there. That was the original, the first commercial building on West Avenue, which made Granddad the first merchant on West Avenue.
How about that?
And what's cool about that building to this day, when Mr. Murdoch came in and did all the renovations that they did, that building was pretty much untouched. It was kept in that original look and as it is today.
Right. Well, they changed colors on it. I mean, it started out as brown brick, I guess, or red brick, and then through the years it became white brick, and then it went back. Today it's red brick again. But there was the room upstairs. If you flip the page there, you'll see the building there in white brick. That was in the 1940s. And by the way, when Ken Lingerfeld, is it not Lingerfeld?
Yeah, Lingerfeld.
Kent Gregory came into the picture. I called Kent Gregory, got him on the phone. I told him the history about the upstairs of the building up there, because I told him the wood floors up there. And by the way, for the sake of the folks, the whole family lived up there. There were 8 of them that lived upstairs in that building. And we'll come back to that. But I told him, if you're going to take those windows out of that building, I would like to have those windows if you're going to replace them. And even if you're going to rip up those old wood floors up there, I'd like to have the wood, and I'll buy it from you. But I told him the history of what went on up there, so they decided they were wanting to preserve history. I got the windows, but they kept the floors. And if you go up there and look, that picture on your right there, Chris, you can see the lines on the floors where the walls were, the separators. But there were 8 of them. Turns out once Grandma got here, they started the family. She came with the daughter. Her name was Maisel. Maisel was 11 years old when she came here. When she got married, they had the big wedding at First Presbyterian there. And supposedly, according to all the newspaper articles and all, that was a social event of the year. She was the first, what they had, I guess it's like Shriners or something, they were called the Rainbow Girls, and she was the first Chinese rainbow girl in the whole organization.
How about that?
But they had all the rainbow colors in the wedding, the bridesmaids. It was a big wedding. The bridesmaids all wore different colors and all that. There was a lady here who grew up on West Avenue. Her name was Betty Honeycutt, who later on became Betty Williams and became an opera singer. I think she married the first surgeon at the hospital in Concord. And she was telling me about all of this. And she said, but I was young, but I was at Mazel's wedding. She said, I was at Mazel's wedding. It was
like a big event.
It was.
Yeah.
So, in fact, she told me, she said, I remember, well, let's come back to that.
So let me ask a question while you're right here. The 8 people that lived upstairs would have been who exactly?
Right. Well, there was grandmother, granddad, and Mazel. Once they got here 25 years later, or was it 25 years later? 1925, 12, 13, whatever the time was.
There's a photo right here. It looks like Mazel as a child in 1913. Would that be
That's right? Yeah. They were there. Then Dad was born in the Lowe's building, and then they moved around. And then, let's see, I guess probably maybe 2-3 years later, there was New Moon. And then there was Uncle Jim. Uncle Jim served in a short stint in the Army, and then he went to Davidson College, left Davidson College, went in the Army, came back, went to the University of North Carolina, got his PhD in chemistry, and became the chairman of the chemistry and math department at Campbell College, which is now Campbell University.
How about that?
Wow.
Until he retired into probably in 1990 or so. So, but that was Uncle Jim. And then next there was Uncle Sonny, or his name was Kenson. Kenson was Sonny. He was the champion ping pong player of the YMCA in downtown Kannapolis during his day.
How about that?
But he went off to he attended university. He graduated University of North Carolina. Then he went, I think, to SMU, Southern Methodist, got a master's degree, and then he got another degree from MIT. And he made a career in the Air Force. When he retired, he was a retired major in the Air Force, and retired, and then did another 20 years in civil service. The last work I think he did, he was selling arms to, they said in Southeast Asia, but it was to South Korea is who he was selling arms to. And then I think he settled at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and he was down writing the computer programs for the F-15 simulators.
Wow.
Down there. Highly intelligent man. I never knew the guy had that much intelligence, but just his big heart. I never knew how big his heart was until we had our reunion down in Florida, down at, he was in Fort Walton Beach, and we went over to, what's the really nice beach down there? Can't think
Palm
of
Beach?
Palm Beach?
No.
South Beach?
No, not that side. The other side of Florida.
Oh.
Destin. I'm trying to think of Destin. We had our dinner down in Destin, and he got up and he started talking about the family and tears and talking about grandma and mom left all this, and she wanted us to have this legacy. Just an incredible person. So, but that was Sonny. I remember him being as a retired major, and then from Sonny we stepped down to Lincoln. I think Lincoln might have gone to Davidson College as well. He was always fascinated with physics, and he became a nuclear engineer.
Oh,
Yeah.
what an incredible legacy from a family. I mean, remarkable.
He was on the original team over in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Yes.
And
which is outside of Knoxville. That played a huge part in U.S. history. People may not be familiar.
And they sent him out to Area 51 for about a year and a half. If you're familiar with Area 51 and what all was going on out there, I don't know. I guess they were building nuclear bombs out there.
You said his name was Lincoln?
His name was Lincoln.
And did you say your mother was? You said someone was born in Lincolnton or had been.
Mother was in Lincoln.
Do you think the name Lincoln came from the Lincolnton, maybe?
I have no idea.
Kind of putting that 2 and 2 together. Wasn't sure.
Maybe
her car.
Mom, I don't know.
Maybe could have been a car. Hey. That's Ford
That's
Motor
where I
Company.
would put it from.
Yeah.
So that was
But
So
that was Lincoln.
That was Lincoln, and
then the last son's name was Walker. Walker, again, he went to the University of North Carolina. In fact, up there, there's a street there on campus. It's kind of a private street that goes down, and from what I understand, a lot of partying goes on that street down there. When my son was at Chapel Hill, Uncle Walker asked him if he spent a lot of time on that street. I can't tell you the name of it, but not Franklin Street, but it was more private, kind of a dirt road kind of effect, But Walker went to Carolina, and then he became an educator. Met his wife, and they went to just outside of Baltimore, Maryland, which is called Dundalk, Maryland. And he helped, or he pretty much wrote the curriculum for Dundalk Community College there, put all that together. And then he was also a gymnastics teacher and came down through the springs, and the spotters weren't working, and broke his back and healed. And then he became the director of media arts, teaching photography, and he would be doing these kind of things today with podcasts and all that kind of stuff. But
8 people in that upstairs. That's incredible.
Upstairs. Now, Betty Williams, I mentioned her. She told me when I went to visit with her in Greenville that she lived where Lee's warehouse is today. There were 2 houses that sat there, and she lived in the second house. And she said she used to walk from home to First Baptist Church up there. And she would look up in the laundry, and there would be one light on, and the 5 boys would be around the table up there studying. And I thought, well, she thought they were studying, But I mentioned that to Uncle Jim. She said she's exactly right. We were all up there studying. They all did very well. They were all, I guess, what we would call today honor students. Sure. Quill and scrolling, and held offices and all that kind of stuff.
So they all went to J.W. Cannon?
Except Walker went to Cannon, but Walker actually, if you remember, that first class of A.L. Brown was kind of a transition class. Right. Mm-hmm. And he was president of either the student body or the senior class. I'm thinking the senior class. So he was the first student body president or senior class president at A.L. Brown.
It's got something in common with you.
Told you there was a lot of first.
Right. Yeah.
We have another one right here.
Yep. Just a couple years later.
Yeah.
Just a couple years later. So,
man, this is just a remarkable journey to, again, we started this episode just talking about this amazing legacy that your family had left, and just to kind of learn the intricacies and just all the different stories of these people who all went in a lot of different directions, but all have done incredibly significant things.
Well, and if it hadn't been for J.W. Cannon and, of course, later Charles Cannon to make sure they were taken care of and building and all that sort of thing, this would have been a very different story.
I have never had the opportunity, because I left Kannapolis and was gone for quite a while, and then came back in 2018. But I've never had the opportunity to meet. My brothers have, but I've never met Bill or Ann Cannon, either one. But I've always wanted to stop and look them in the eye and say thank you to your grandparents and great grandparents for what they did for my family.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
And hopefully they'll hear that on this broadcast. But
I want to ask you this, and this could be a tougher question, but Chinese Americans, Chinese people here in a predominantly southern town, a mill town, there's a lot of different agriculture and manufacturing personalities. How do you feel like your family was treated? Were they very warmly welcomed? Do you think it was a tough kind of an outcast kind of thing? How do you feel they were treated in those days?
My granddad was treated very well by the people here. My uncles, just by the nature of growing up and youth being youth, felt some discrimination. Even I, in the 70s, got caught a little of that. It was called some different names and made fun of a little bit. And I didn't think much about it, but it's really true. When you think back about it, it happened. One thing, there's a photo in there somewhere of my granddad, and there's a lot of Chinese writing and characters on there. And I've had several people look at that photo that could actually interpret Cantonese. Our family didn't come from They came out of what was called Canton, China at the time, which is right across the bay from Hong Kong. And so you had Cantonese, and then you have Mandarin, and then there's hundreds of other dialects. But finding people to read Cantonese was a little difficult. But on the writings on that photo, they tell me that he's talking about poverty, and that the way out of poverty was through education. And he made sure, I'm guessing, because boys are boys, he made sure those boys got their education. Pictures I don't have in there. I've got some. The Chinese came to America to escape the poverty of China, and I guess Granddad did pretty well because I've seen no evidence of real, poverty in the any of the materials that I have. That one picture you had back up right there, that little that blue band right there, the laundry, what they did in the laundry was it was a hand wash, hand fold, hand iron laundry, and it was all done by hand. And that little blue and red strip there was one of the wrappers that they put on the shirts.
Oh wow!
And if you look at it close, it gives you the phone number 7191 that we talked about being one of the longest running phone numbers. And the hours they worked were what, 6 a.m.
6 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's a long day.
That's a long day.
Yeah,
a long day.
But they were living right there, so they could just walk downstairs. That was in the realtor world. That's live work environment.
That's the way I do today. But
wow.
And it is great. So the only problem is you never get away from work.
Sure. Let's fast forward just a little bit if we can. So you grew up here, graduated from Ale Brown, I believe in 1972. Tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up here, and just some of the memories that you had growing up, walking the streets of downtown. Your family business and things like that.
Well, you mentioned walking the streets.
Well, we all did. It's easy to.
I used to go to work with Dad. I was thinking about that coming over here because Mom was in the car, and we grew up right across the street from Shady Brook Elementary School, and we came down Klondale Avenue in what I call the back way. And Dad had a lady that worked the desk at the laundry, and we always stopped and picked her up, and she came to work. I guess Mom must have taken the car and came back home because we only have one car, and I could never figure out where Dad parked the car. So it must have been Mom took it back home, and then she came back and got us. But I'd go to work with Dad playing the laundry. Dad used to give me a nickel every day. And I would take that nickel and walk down to the drugstore on the corner, and was it F.L. Smith? Was that the one that was on the corner there on West Avenue? Do you remember?
F.L. Smith was up at the side Montgomery Wards. I know that. And
okay,
I think
there was another
Kannapolis.
one. There was another one down on West Avenue, but they had a lunch counter, and I would take my nickel. I'd crawl up on the bench at the lunch counter and lay my nickel on there up there, and they'd bring me 2 scoops of ice cream, always vanilla ice cream. I still eat vanilla ice cream today, but they bring me 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream on a sugar cone, and I would go walk the streets of Kannapolis eating my ice cream. And
how old were you?
Going in the store. I would have been 5 years old.
5 years old
at the time.
So like 1957 or.
I started in school in 1960, so I've been 58, 77, 58, 59, born in 54. So
54.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
F.W. Woodworth, they always had the best toys to stand around and look at. Goodyear had good toys. If you remember the Goodyear store up on the corner up there. As far as my great memories, good memories in school, I was in band when Lou Beam was there when he first came. He grew that band. I think my senior year, we went to New Orleans, represented North Carolina in the Greatest Band in Dixie contest. Finished 3rd, I think, in that contest. Trophies in the trophy room in the social room over at school.
Got that.
So, but
How many members were in the band at that point?
well, that's what I was going to talk about. I think there were like 180 in the band total. I know when we lined up at the end zone, and then when the drums started and we came out on the field, we stretch from the goal line to the 40-yard line. To the 40-yard line. I'm pretty sure it's a 40-yard line. I was thinking about that. Was it really the 40-yard line? But I think we had like 120 or 140 instruments, not including the flag girls and the majorettes and the sponsors and all of that. It was huge.
Pretty cool.
And you're still playing an
That was a
instrument.
great time.
You're still playing it.
I'm playing my horn again.
What'd you play?
Play trumpet.
Okay.
So
He plays at First Baptist.
How about that?
They got a
cool deal.
That's an interesting twist. I started out as a trumpet major in college, and my dream was always to play in the Doc Severinsen band. But you get to looking at the roster or the possibilities of that, and you find out there's like 10,000 people on the list just to audition, you know. And I said, well, I don't think I'm that good, so changed majors. But then back in 1990, I picked my horn back up and started playing over at Hickory Grove Baptist and Church over there, and played about 10 years, not quite 10 years over there, and put it down again. And then 2 summers ago, I got my horn out, just playing it around the house, and took it in, had it worked on, cleaned up and everything. And I get a phone call from a friend that says, you've got a house listed that my client would like to see tomorrow, but I can't be there to show it to him. Would you show it for me? And I said, Susan, you know I will. So I went and showed the house to these people, and it turns out that it was Tim Smith, who is the minister of music now, or the worship leader, whatever you want to call him today, at First Baptist. And he was telling me that they had started an orchestra up there, and they had about 14 people, but they did not have a trumpet player. And I said, uh-oh. I know now why you put me up to this, you know. So I went and joined the orchestra. It's been great. So,
Great.
But, those are great memories.
And let's talk about the Buyer's Mart piece of y'all's history too, a little bit. I don't want to bypass that.
Yeah, Granddad got sick in '49, and my dad took over the laundry in in '47. Dad took over the laundry in '47. All my uncles, they left town, didn't come back. So, you know, the tradition was the oldest son would take care of the family. That was a Chinese tradition. So Dad stepped up. He didn't get to go to college. He did serve in the maritime service. Spent about a year and a half bringing soldiers home from Europe after World War II. And then in '61, he decided that he was going to do something different. So he brought in my grandmother's, it would have been his niece, who was coming from China. They had to find somebody to marry her to get her here. And they had circulated her picture around the laundry, because there were 5 boys in there, right? Yeah. Nobody wanted it. Nobody took them up on it. So they found this guy in Washington, D.C., and Chuck, he married her. Her name's Catois, but she goes by Kathy, okay. So he married her. They came in, and they ran the laundry till 1963. Dad started his furniture and appliance business in '61 in the building on what was Center Grove Road, now is Dale Earnhardt, right? It's now Reed's Gun Shop.
Oh, okay.
There. So he began there, and he sold that building to Reed in '63.
So he built that building for that business, or?
I don't know if he built the one on Dale Earnhardt, but he built the one on Main Street, which he kept the Buyer's Market. It was a furniture and appliance store, and we sold lots of furniture, lots of appliances. We had clients that came from really all over the country, all over the world, in one part of the clientele there. But 1989 is when he decided to close the Buyer's Market, and then Junie and Darrell Perkins stepped up, bought the building from Dad, and the Carpet Connection was birthed out of that. And the Carpet Connection was sold just 3 years ago. Junie sold it, I think. My brother Danny worked there with Junie, and Danny is now got a partner, and they have a place up on North Cannon Boulevard. I think it's called Carolina Custom Cabinets, Countertops, and Floors. Yeah. It's a long name, but so they're still in operation up there. And I came back after being gone from after pretty much after high school to Kannapolis, being gone really about 45 years. Came back in 2018, reinstated my real estate license, and here we are.
Wow.
Well, your dad, he was such a nice guy, and I know my grandmother, my granddaddy, they all knew him and always thought a lot of him. And and he passed away, what year did he pass away?
He passed away in 2016.
16.
Yeah.
So he passed away before everything kind of changed downtown, and
he didn't get to see it.
He didn't get to see it.
And
what do you think he would say today if he could see it?
Oh, if he could see it today, I don't think he would believe it. My Uncle Jim, we just lost him 2 years ago. He was 96 when he passed, and all I could do was send him pictures. We couldn't get him down here, but he said, "I can't believe it's a baseball stadium sitting over there."
Seriously.
Because I took pictures from the baseball stadium shooting back to the laundry, and from the laundry shooting across the street over there before they built the apartments, and you could see it all,
Wow.
And but
at least he got to see it.
Well, he got to see it in photos.
Yeah, photos.
So,
Wow.
But I think they would all just be amazed. I think they would be happy that the downtown area has come back to life.
Well, I think, in so many ways, your family represents the true American dream story. They came here and very successful. The kids were very successful.
And I think that has to do with upbringing. Now, I've got a cousin in Baltimore that told me, he said, "Man, you make Granddad look really great. I heard he threw hammers at him." He'd get mad and throw hammers at him and stuff like that. I don't know. I never really got to meet him and had no idea about him. And I guess that's part of what really motivated me to dig down deep and try to find out what I could about them, because I feel like at least I've got a part of that now,
right?
And know a little bit about him. And I didn't mention anything about my aunt Maisel. Maisel was an amazing person. She was an honor student and all, and she and her husband, whose name was York Lee, they had one of the first Chinese restaurants in Greensboro, and they lived in Greensboro for all the years. But shouldn't leave her out.
No, well, also I don't want to leave your mother, Dobby, out. Yeah. And she had a show here on WRKB.
She did. Let me back up for just a second. We talked about the laundry. There's a couple of little stories there that this man and his wife came through Kannapolis, and they were selling stock in. You see that?
I do. I'm sorry, I had to chuckle just by the headline.
Yeah, and it was bogus stock in some Chinese motor company, I think it was. And they in that time they put $500 into that stock. That was a lot of money back in that day, And then they caught up with the guy and his wife and find out it was Jesse James's first cousin.
No way. Wow.
If you read the story, it'll tell you down in there.
That might be who he threw a hammer at.
I don't know, but they got their money back.
It was definitely some rough talk.
And then the other article I think you see right there, it's a newspaper article that was written about Granddad Jung. Dad and Mom and Grandma and all that had gone to Greensboro to visit with Maisel, and Granddad stayed back and was tending to the laundry when they wrote that article. And they asked him, this must have been about the time when they started building the Williamsburg style up to the corner from the laundry up, because they asked him how he felt about what would happen if Mr. Cannon moved him out of that building to another location. And he says, he said he wouldn't want to do that. He didn't want to move. He said, I don't think I would ever see my friends. You see, the Chinese people, these guys that came over here that did all the laundries and stuff, they were very, very lonely people. And they did a lot of drinking, probably a lot of opium. But Mr. Cannon left him in that building.
I'm going to read this quote from him.
And never moved him.
Yeah, I like this quote. There was almost nothing here when I came, says Dan. A few stores, some woods here and there in the present Uptown district. Houses, horses, mules tied, and then where the Montgomery store is now. So, I mean, that's kind of crazy.
Which is where the Earnhardt statue is.
Yes.
For those,
horses and mules.
Yeah, wow.
So,
that's cool.
I asked Dad one time, did you ever meet Mr. Cannon? And he said, yeah, I met him one time. He said, I got a letter from Mr. Cannon. They were raising the rent on the laundry. And he said, so I called up there, and they made me an appointment. I went up to visit with him, and he said, he's just the nicest man you'd ever meet. And we sit and talked, but he still raised my damn rent.
and probably, and if the stories are true, he probably made you say, thank you for raising my rent.
Yeah, he probably,
with a smile on your face.
On a smile on his face. So,
right.
But going back to talk about Mom, Mom was back in the 90s. She had a down at the furniture store. There were two sides. When Dad opened, there was a furniture store and there was a pawn shop, a hock shop or pawn shop, and then Dad closed the pawn shop, and they put a fabric store in there that Mother ran the fabric store. And then she, that was after the original fabric store was across from the Whataburger in North Kannapolis up there in kind of that, what I call that island of buildings there.
Yep.
Where there used to be a bowling alley up there. If you remember the duck pen bowling alley up there, it was in that area right there. And then she moved down to the store. And then when they closed that up, I'm thinking about that time, she got interested in broadcasting. She got a little job. Folks listening might remember John Stiles, that was a manager of WRKB. John put her in there. Just reading news was pretty much, and telling people what time it was.
How about that?
And then she had a very soft, calming voice, and so John gave her a little bit, kept giving her a little more time until she eventually had her own show, and she would play music, read the news, tell what time it was, and then she'd turn everything off and just open the Bible and start reading.
Oh.
And I had people from I was working in Charlotte at South Park at the time, and I was running a clothing store, and that people would come in, and several people came in. It's not like a floodgate, but I introduced myself. I'm going to help them pick out some clothes and stuff. Jung, are you related to that lady on the radio?
About that.
Over in Charlotte. And I said, yeah, that's my mom. And in fact, when I was in the financial services business after that, my best client, I met them on what we called an orphan insurance lead. It means they had bought a policy from the company many years ago from the company that I was with, and went over to just do a service call and gave him my name. And he says, are you related to that lady on the radio? I said, yes, I am. And I said, that's my mama. And the business deal was done then.
Right. Sealed the deal.
Sealed the deal. And so, she became really around this area here kind of a sought after speaker in the churches and things. And
what was her show called?
So,
have a name or anything?
Not really.
It was just time on the radio.
Just her time,
yeah.
her Dobby Jung show, I guess. But she left after WRKB. She went to the satellite programming network in Charlotte, and all she got to do over there was just run tapes, and then so she left there and went to WHVN on North Tryon Street and had a show there, and then she eventually got out of it. I think she had to get out of it to take care of her sister. So,
wow.
But
well, Tim, I've got to say you are part of probably one of the most remarkable families to come out of Kannapolis and to hear, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story.
Yeah.
It has been a very educational trip here.
I think it's a pretty incredible immigration story, in that Granddad came from total poverty and came to the United States and made his way in business and in life, and then taught his children to do the same, and they all obviously did very well for themselves. So, a lot to be proud of.
Yes.
Yes.
It is,
Totally.
It is a good legacy.
Like Ryan said.
And it's awesome to get it recorded, like on our show, to be able to be a part of that history.
Yes. I mean, like you said, and I mean, part of the American dream. Your family did it.
It's what they did.
He did it.
Yeah, did it.
Man, this
They
is
might
awesome.
not have realized what they were doing.
No.
But just trying to get through life,
Mhm.
And,
Man. This is great,
So-
Ryan.
Yeah, what a great episode this has been. And
Well-
really do appreciate you coming on here and talking. And in fact, earlier this week, I talked to Bill Cannon, and he mentioned y'all again about having y'all on the show. And yeah, he's they've been on our list. And so when this opening came available today, this is perfect if you could do it. So appreciate
Well, I
it.
appreciate the opportunity. Jenny has a standing bridge game Thursday and Friday afternoon, so I knew I wouldn't get him here. Danny, I asked him if he wanted to come. He says, "Well, I would, but I know what's going to happen." He said, "Every time I say something, you correct me." So,
So you just stand in for all of it.
so I stand in there. So
We appreciate
it's
it.
been fun.
And just though, another pitch, we briefly mentioned it, but you do real estate here in Kannapolis,
Yes.
Concord area, and well known about housing, and so and you're Tim Jung Realty.
Tim Jung Realty, and I am my own corporation, but I am also affiliated with a company out of Naples, Florida called Call It Closed International Realty. So, and my motto is, or my tagline, whatever you want to call it, is service with integrity and a commitment to excellence. And then the other one is, if you list with Tim, you can call it closed. So,
How
How about that? I like it. I like it.
thank you.
We'll ring the bell on that one there.
So I wanted to shout that, make sure that's shouted out.
Absolutely.
for
I
you.
mean, we appreciate your time, and absolutely, as we want every business here in the Kannapolis area to thrive, we certainly want yours too as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Ryan, this has been a great one.
It has been. This is what we wanted this to be about. So it's been perfect.
Absolutely. You ready to go play some pickleball?
No, we need to eat something first.
Well, we don't have the phone, so we can't call the Whataburger, so I don't know what we're going to do
You're
now.
gonna have to honk that 76 horn.
Maybe they'll deliver. We had Darlene last week. Deliver that.
Yeah,
so
and
she
speaking
can-
of that episode, that's really done well, and
Yeah.
a lot of people excited to see that show. And I don't know if you've watched it yet.
Not yet, but I will.
It's it turned out really well, and thanks to Aaron Beaver again for
Yes,
with our sound issue we had, and we survived.
absolutely. But
So.
thank you, Tim, and thank you to everybody else that makes the K-Tel connection possible. Friends at Hillbush Ford, Susan Bear, Carolina Pickleball Club. Unfortunately, again, we mentioned at the beginning, we've kind of lost Dr. Dave for a little bit. He needs a real doctor.
Said he'll be back next week.
So we got to get him better. But Tim, thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
All right.
Are you gonna ring the bell and hit another car?
I
You
am.
don't hit these glasses.
No, I think the bell throwing's retired.
Man.
That's part of the show, but he put them glasses there on me, and I don't feel like I know. I've been like eyeballing. It's like I don't know where to
You
throw
could
the
just
bell.
throw it over there.
I
What
think
do you
my
throw the bell?
I think my mom hates it, but I think my mom must have paid Ryan off by putting them glasses there after last time. So I guess we're just gonna have to.
Don't throw the horn.
That's it. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for joining us here at the K-Town Connection. As always, follow us on all of our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and whatever else may be out there. But for Dr. Dave, Chuck Irvin, who's not here, wish you well. Love you, brother. Tim Jung, thank you. And to your family and for everything you guys have done for our community over the past 100+ years. And for Rough Talk Ryan and myself, I guess that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
All right.
Man, that was great, Tim. You were phenomenal. Phenomenal.
I was bouncing around. But that's okay.
But we need.
Your premier Ford dealership is located here in Cabarrus County, where more than 70 years in the business lends to an incredible experience for every customer, every time. Whether you're looking for the toughness of an F-150, the spirit of a Bronco, or the versatility of an Explorer, you'll find it all at Hilbish Ford, your truck destination. Come experience the Hilbish difference in Kannapolis, just a 10-minute drive from Charlotte Motor Speedway, or get started online at HilbishFord.com.